When you're in the highest tax bracket and you live in California, 50% of your net income is going to taxes.
Jeez. That's awful.
I know. It's terrible. So a lot of, people think they're making so much money, they have all this cash coming in, and then April 15th, 50% of it's gone.
What would you recommend for business owners, knowing that already exists for them? Today, we're going to talk about all the hidden profit killers in your business, or at least the short list that we always look for when we're working with our clients. So, Andrea, I'd love to hear your experience. What is your number one thing that you see in businesses that are slowly killing business owners' profits just right off the bat?
Well, personally, for me, the number one thing I see is the tax bill at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Because I'm a tax person, I look at tax returns all day. When you're in the highest tax bracket and you live in California, 50% of your net income is going to taxes.
Jeez. That's awful.
I know. It's terrible. So a lot of, people think they're making so much money, they have all this cash coming in, and then April 15th, 50% of it's gone.
What would you recommend for business owners, knowing that already exists for them right off the bat? What would you recommend they do so that they account for that and or try and mitigate it?
They need to be looking at their financials, at their numbers throughout the whole entire year, and they need to know exactly what they're going to owe in taxes. And they either need to be making decisions to make that number go down, or they need to be planning ahead, paying an estimated tax payments, saving the cash, setting it aside into a high interest account so that you have the cash to pay it on tax day. And they just need to be very proactive about it instead of a week before April 15th. Freaking out that all of your cash is going to be gone. Or even at the end of the year, I see people making crazy decisions because they know they only have 2 weeks to spend their cash to reduce their tax bill. So they're going out and they're making these decisions just to get a lower bill that the decisions don't even make sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think, it's like that rookie type of tax strategy where it's go spend all your money so you don't have to pay taxes, but now you can't strategically grow. What is one thing you see as a tax strategy that doesn't always make sense for business owners, but is often one tax strategist will offer without considering the goals of the business owner? Both personal and professional?
Probably purchasing a vehicle.
Yeah.
So every CPA out there says, go out there and go buy a brand new car, finance it, drive it off the lot, your tax bill. You can take bonus depreciation on the full thing, which is great. It's fun to buy a new car, but interest rates are high right now. At the end of the year, that's actually the worst time to buy a new vehicle because these car dealerships know that everybody is looking just for that tax write-off. So they're not going to be bargaining with you. They know that you need the car more than they need the sale. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a bad time to buy. I would say a better time to buy would be the beginning of the year, spring and summertime.
And one could argue only buy if you need to buy.
Right. Is that really benefiting your business and helping you scale and grow?
For sure.
Most of the time it's not, unless you need a cargo van or a large truck in order to make the business better. Mm-hmm. But if you're just going out there to try to get a tax write-off, that's not really helping you grow. And your cash is going to be tied up in these vehicle payments.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not super beneficial to go and do that. Sometimes it does make sense, but not all the time. You need to really look at your numbers and look at your business and try to see what your business really needs to grow.
For sure. And I think this is why we saw the gap in the market, is that oftentimes tax strategy only works as well as how much you know the business, whether it's their personal or professional goals, but also their end-to-end customer journey. Like, you really have to understand how they work to then be able to recommend a tax strategy that makes sense with their cash flow. And we noticed not a lot of people had the cash flow they needed to do tax strategy. And that kind of lends itself to one of the biggest profit suckers I've seen, is just how products and offers are priced. And we forget when we do pricing to factor in overhead. And when we do that, we can find ourselves in a position where every time we sell that offer, every time we sell that product, we're actually selling it at a loss, which then eats completely into our profit and then doesn't set us up for success. So I have one example of a business owner I worked with. We did a pricing analysis. They do custom pricing. And we found about 1.4 million in unaccounted for costs by doing the pricing analysis, because there were a couple different factors. One, the assumed labor rate was lower than it should have been. So every time they would work on the project, it actually cost them more to work on the project than they realized. And then two, they were looking at a profit at gross margin, but then they were looking at a loss at net margin after they factored in the cost of doing business every day. And so when they identified this, they then changed the way they do their proposal process. Now they factor in that overhead, they tack on not the full overhead percentage, but just a little bit more, so that they know for sure they have that predictable margin at the end. Now they know they can guarantee not only gross margin plus the 5 or 10% overhead percentage that they added on is going to be the profit they have. And I think that's where the power is like understanding where your money is going, and then also building the system so then you can get the same amount of money every time you sell that service or offer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. That's so awesome that you found that for them. And I feel like once it is set up with that specific offer, you're able to just resell and resell, and you know it's working. The only time you really need to reevaluate is if your business changes.
Yes. Or you like hire someone at a different labor rate, you know what I mean? And you shift how your offers are delivered. That's like another place that can suck your profit, is pitching one service and letting scope creep happen, and you start over delivering consistently, and now you're getting paid less, having to do more. And you're kind of in that cycle if you don't kind of break it and say, hey, no, that actually needs a contract amendment, or hey, that's out of scope. Let's go ahead and negotiate the terms of doing that thing. And I think business owners get nervous to do that. I don't know what your experience has been like in our industry, but often people get freaked out. But the truth is, like, that's not what we agreed to do. So we need to be able to charge that so we can deliver quality service. And if we don't get paid for it, it's eventually the quality is going to suffer, right?
Right. And I see this a lot of times with new business owners, or like business owners in those younger stages, because at the beginning, you're doing everything yourself and you're doing an amazing job. That's why you started the business. But you price everything just based off of you doing the work and not considering paying other people to help you out. And as you start to grow, you start paying people here and there, you start paying contractors, you start paying people to give you back your time so you can take on more clients. And that's when these mistakes start slipping through the cracks, because you're not realizing how much you're actually spending and what's going into the final product. And the next thing you know, you're not making any money.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like, as the business owner, we get in the weeds of delivering the product, the quality of service, trying to get more clients and do that. It's always so important at that point to say, hey, what kind of expert do I need in my business to partner with that's going to help have that bird's eye view? And that's kind of what we do at Thorn, where we come in and we really partner with you. We understand what your goals are, both professionally and personally. But then we understand your end-to-end customer journey. So then that way we can say, hey, I'm not a marketing expert, but have you considered doing X, Y, and Z because we need to sell more of this revenue stream versus that one? Or,
Right.
hey, have you considered discontinuing selling this because no matter what you do, it's never profitable? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like most CPAs are just focused on getting the tax return out. Or if you ask them for tax strategy, they're like, go to the car dealership and buy a car before December 31st.
Right.
But what we're doing is so different because we're really looking at your whole picture, seeing how you're pricing things, seeing where there's cash leaks. And we're giving you business advice and cash flow advice along with the tax strategy to make sure that that tax strategy actually makes sense for you.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like that holistic approach where we're like, hey, we know you are people, you want to build wealth and legacy, and you have goals and priorities and all of those things. And we're not going to ignore that just to get you a lower tax bill. And I think sometimes tax strategists can kind of fall into that trap without consideration that that business owner might not ever be able to grow and scale to their potential if their cash isn't available for them to actually do that. And so that's where it's so imperative to work with a professional that asks, what are you trying to achieve here? But not just for today, but for the next 5, 10 years, you know?
Definitely.
I think that also lends itself talking about like misaligned growth, right? I think once you have the numbers, it's really easy for that to drive the boat. But like if you're not passionate about the thing, we shouldn't be selling the thing anymore. If that thing is no longer going to allow you to be encouraged to market, network, and do what's necessary, that's one aspect of it. But that also goes along the same lines with those tax strategies where it's like, hey, if this tax strategy does not make sense for the person who still needs to reinvest in the business to grow, we need to be able to call that out too, because that will kill your profit faster than anything, I think.
Yeah, an example that I see all the time is people that want to max out their retirement plan in order to reduce their tax bill, but they're also trying to grow their business and they're trying to hire people, they're trying to scale. They want to get to that next level as fast as they can, but they're over here maxing out their retirement accounts. And it's like, do you really want all of that cash tied up in these accounts until you're 59 and a half? Because you're not going to be able to touch that.
For sure.
And there might be a higher return if you put it into your business than if you put it into a retirement account. So
yeah, I think that's like a perfect example of why hiring the professional is everything, because it's really hard to run the scenarios of what's available to you if you don't even know what's available to you, right? Because if you could show me, hey, this is like the average return you're going to get on retirement, and this, if you're able to reinvest in your business, here's the potentiality of what you can make income wise. That's going to make two different decisions at the end of the day. But if you don't know your numbers, you don't know how to even do that analysis, then you're missing the boat on that opportunity to really grow the way you want to grow and what makes sense for you, you know?
yeah, definitely. And then you have someone in your ear telling you, max out the retirement account, it'll reduce your tax bill. You have another person within your company saying, oh, put it back in the business, we'll be able to hit this revenue goal next year. And you're being pulled all of these different directions. You need to take a step back and look at everything together. The tax and running the business.
100%. And I think that is a lot easier to do with somebody who has like your best interest in mind, right? And I think oftentimes people have competing agendas depending if they're your financial advisor or if they are somebody in the business versus, you know, your wife or husband or whomever, you know. And so having that independent party, but understands the intricacy of your business, they're able to speak truth in those situations to give you what makes the most sense for you, but also to run through what it would look like each time or in different ways if you decide to go that way, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this week, talking about profit killers is supposed to be a positive thing. So if you learned something this week from us, please feel free to share it with us. If you have questions related to this, always feel like you can reach out. Hope you guys have a great week.